Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The Push with Nick and KP. We are here to do the Monday Night Raw recap, which took place in Greensville, South Carolina. We kick off the show with a Logan Paul promo, who comes to the ring stating a bunch of facts, as he calls them. With these facts, he states that he's going to beat Jay on Saturday, a Saturday night main event, and become our new World Heavyweight Champion. He is interrupted by Gunther, not Jay, which was a bit surprising to me, who comes to the ring, blows a bunch of smoke up Logan's behind, and says he views wrestling as a business, whereas wrestling to Gunther is very personal. Then, after getting Logan's confidence all up, he then kind of walks all over him. Gunther eventually walks away, and as Logan continues to, talk trash to him, try to get him to come back to the ring, and Gunther, of course, is unfazed by all of this, and Logan Paul then gets a super kick from jeyuso, who was standing pretty much behind him for a little bit there. Yeah, a decent enough opening promo. It's still a bit strange how they're doing, all three of these guys when, really just Logan and Jay. So kind of looking past Logan, Gunther promised that match in Arizona the Monday after Money in the Bank. So it's a bit strange, but, it's something a little different, I guess. So there's that. We then... Well, actually, hang on. Before we get into the next segment, the next match, we have an earlier in the day bit with Roxanneperez, who is seen, I believe it was originally announced on social media, but on Raw we see it. Roxanne is seen signing a contract to officially become part of Monday Night Raw's roster. So, a great acquisition by Raw. But in terms of the push and our podcast, I have no idea what KP and I will complain about now. It felt like it was a month in the works, at least. But Roxanne is finally a part of the main roster officially, so great to see. And a little more on that later. We then get into the first match of the night, which features Penta and AJ Styles versus Finn and JD McDonough of the Judgment Day. This is a pretty good match, obviously, as it should be with the four individuals in there. But unfortunately, this was more about kind of things outside of the match. So we have Carlito, who's outside of the ring, and El Grande Americano, who ends up making his presence felt as well. Penta and AJ are just unable to overcome all of this. And noteworthy again that Dom is not at ringside. So after a headbutt to the back of the head by Penta, Fenn gets the 3 count. But yeah, again, a good match, albeit the outcome a bit predictable, and an ending we've seen probably upwards of 300 and something times before the Judgment Day. So yeah, a good match, just a bit of an ending. But it helps progress the storyline yet again. El Grande Americano needs to be dealt with by Penta. And, the Judgment Day is doing Judgment Day things. I can't recall exactly when it was, and I think it was later in the evening, but go ahead and hit on it here. And that was later in the evening, I believe, when it took place, when Fenn brings up Roxanne to the rest of the Judgment Day, and obviously not well received. Fenn thinks that maybe Roxanne could have a place in the Judgment Day. Mostly offended by this, I would say, would be Raquel, shortly followed by Dom. But essentially, it appears to be a ploy by Fenn, just trying to get under the skin, it's like trying to replace Liv. And Fenn knows that the look on his face is pretty funny. But Roxanne comes with gifts. He gives a bag of apples to Carlito, of course, and then gives what I guess like a catering sized box of chicken nuggets to Dom. Of course, this gets Dom's attention, and he kind of looks like he's in a good way shocked, and kind of taking note of the situation. So interesting segment there. Clearly, all Fenn trying to get under the skin of the rest of the Judgment Day, particularly Liv. So we'll see what the fallout ends up being on that. We then get into our next match, which is a Money in the Bank qualifier for the women's, the second of 6. This features Becky Lynch, Roxanne Perez, and Natalya. And kind of mentioned a bit earlier, can you believe it? On the same night that Roxanne gets called to Monday Night Raw, she also wins her Money in the Bank qualifier. Yeah, I obviously I think both KP and I wanted this to happen. Just didn't think it would with Becky Lynch in the match. You know, and kind of her angle since she's been back has been pretty good, and you know, in terms of what she's been able to do in a short time back, she's done quite a bit. So kind of figured that's where they would go here, but they didn't. The Prodigy gets the qualifying win and is headed to Money in the Bank. So crazy to think all of the stuff that she's already done before she even became part of Monday Night Raw or the main roster. And now on the same night as she gets that official contract, she is going to Money in the Bank. So drop a rocket to her. She's going to be doing big things for quite some time, I think. Even got some Roxanne Perez chants throughout the night. So I don't think KP and I are alone in wanting and waiting for Roxanne to be a part of the main roster. And crazy to think she's only 23 years old. So big things happening there. The ending here, again, another interference ending. But this one makes sense too, because each woman kind of got thrown in the match. The match was good enough, you know, actually pretty good. Everyone kind of showcased their talents here. And then Lyra Valkyria, as the face, actually gets involved, but trying to get revenge on Becky, and takes out Becky. While this is going on, Roxanne ends up hitting Natalya with the pop rocks to get the win. And yeah, like I said, I wanted it to be Roxy, but I didn't think they would do it, especially over Becky. So yeah, can't help but to be pleased with the outcome of this one. Next match, we have Sheamus and Grayson Waller. So this is kind of a fallout of, you know, Grayson had made a match for Theory, didn't tell him who his opponent was, ended up being Sheamus. This is kind of the other side of that same coin. Obviously, this wasn't as good of a match. I mean, Sheamus probably got in 75% of the offense, I'd say at least. This was clearly more about Theory sending a message. And he's seen throughout the match, like trying not to laugh, trying to keep his composure. While Waller is just getting this, you know, this beating from Sheamus. Yeah, I think this is the inevitable breakup of Theory and Waller. I feel like I say this every week too, but it cannot be much longer, I don't think. They're clearly they're not even trying to hide it anymore. If they are, very, very, very little. But and Theory's already over as a face. I feel like the crowd loves Theory already. And you know, it's so easy to hate Waller too. So yeah, this is a good enough match. Obviously, this was more about Waller and Theory, but Sheamus looks great as well. And I kind of mentioned that last week in his match, or when he had his match with Theory. Doesn't look like he's missed a beat. So at his age and his status, that's pretty impressive. KP, thoughts on the first half of Raw? You got the opening segment promo and 3 matches here to kick off Raw. It's very rare that we have that much action in the first half of Raw. So what were your thoughts on all this?
Yeah, lots of action to kick off the show. Lots of talking points. The Logan Paul and Gunther promo, I think, was needed because I think we criticized last week WWE basically just overlooking, you know, Logan Paul as a challenger for Jeyuso, which is going to be happening obviously this weekend. So yeah, they replied with doing this, and it made sense. You know, it put Logan in the credibility factor. You know, made them think that, you know, there actually is a chance that, you know, he could beat Jeyuso. Whether obviously you think that or not, we can obviously say that for another day. But this is a nice step in the right direction, just to basically not completely overwrite the entire thing that they've got going on leading up to Saturday night's main event. Yeah, I mean, Gunther handled this in a weird way. I kind of understood where he was going with it, but he actually gave Logan Paul a lot of praise, and I think his general gimmick is basically just to have like you know, ultimate respect shown to the mat. You know, it's sacred, whatever, the sport, the industry. But then, like, to have someone who is literally an outsider, social media presence, coming on in and, doing a very good job. I'm not going to say he's bad because he's very impressive, and I've said that many times before. But I feel like maybe this is a good opportunity to have Gunter basically to absolutely slam down on Logan from the beginning, that he doesn't respect him because of, where he's come from, his attitude towards the business, how blasé he is about it, and how little he really cares for, everything that Gunter really stands for. I thought it maybe went a little bit against his personality and his gimmick, but I guess maybe I'm looking a little bit too deeply into that. But yeah, it was a decent enough start to the show, and it at least gave Logan some credibility, like I said. The first match was pretty good, to be fair. The tag team contest was a great way to kick things off action-wise. Yeah, like you said, nailed on the head. It's just the same finish that we've seen so many times before. Judgment Day are all about this kind of thing. They get the numbers in, they get the advantage, and then they turn things around. They outsource their problems to, somebody else who can come on in, and El Grande Americano. I'm pretty sure that happened literally, like, was it last week or 2 weeks ago? Something very, very similar, very recently, where El Grande would come on in to help somebody in the Judgment Day win a match. Yeah, I think that was Dom, wasn't it? Actually, I think it was Dom at Backlash. But yeah, it's very similar. The finishes. This is my main critique. But the match was great, really fun, energetic start, and yeah, Judgment Day doing Judgment Day things, I suppose we can say. Roxanne Perez, yeah, very happy for her. Obviously, we've been hoping that she would be announced as a main roster, mainstay for a long time now. So now that she's actually made that decision, put pen to paper, signed the contract, she's officially on Raw. Good. Really glad to hear that. And yeah, what a way to kick things off as well with a victory here in this Money in the Bank qualifying contest. Becky Lynch and Lyra Valkyria continuing their sort of feud they have going at the moment, which is great. I didn't think that would end. So obviously, we had Becky attack Lyra. That was the previous meeting before this show. So yeah, we continue things with a steady pace there, and then Roxy gets the win over Natalia. So yeah, it was a good contest, right winner in my eyes, and I'm glad that WWE saw some sense with the booking here, because I was worried it was going to be Becky Lynch. The match afterwards was decent enough as well. Yeah, Sheamus 1-on-1 with Grayson Waller. Yeah, I think the main talking point, as you've already glossed over, is the relationship that Waller has with Theory. And I think at this point, we really are making strides towards this duo splitting now. I'm all for it. I've been all for it for a long time. They've been putting this on the most slow of burners that you can ever imagine, but I think we're finally about to get there, bit by bit. We've actually seen Theory genuinely being amused at Waller's pain. So yeah, that's a big step in the right direction. But Sheamus, yeah, you touched over this. He's looking great, as always. And yeah, with a win, I think that's absolutely needed, 100%. Get him back into a title picture, I'm sure, some point soon. Or a big feud at some point. Could be on the horizon for Sheamus. Yeah, I think that could be happening. But yeah, the main point is Theory and Waller. And I'm glad to see them taking a big step in that. But yeah, good first half of Raw. Lots of positives, really, here. Only a couple of little things, but yeah, not too bad. Not too bad at all.
Yeah, and it's as you kind of mentioned with the slow burn with Theory and Waller, very much WWE's approach on most of these storylines. It's a slow burn. Doesn't feel like it quite does what's going on justice. It's extremely slow, almost painfully slow burn. But in the end, I think we usually get a payoff. The problem is when they take that long, the expectations that we build naturally are just a little higher than maybe they should be. But yeah, we'll see. I think Theory has a lot of potential, and obviously he got pushed very high at the beginning by Vince, maybe too fast, and some questionable decisions. But Triple H seems to kind of put him on the back burner, and I think they do have a star in him. So I'm interested to see where they go once he gets back on his own. So with that, we'll continue on the rest of Raw, which we then see the next match of the night, which is the third qualifier on the women's side, which is Rhea Ripley, Zoe Stark, and the returning Kairi Sane. Elephant in the room, of course. Unfortunately, while the match was, I would say, okay, the main takeaways, obviously the big one is going to be Zoe's injury here. Never want to see that happen, especially to someone who essentially her entire group, her faction just got broken up and or released. And So on top of that, she's back in action and she gets injured the first night, and what appears to be a pretty serious injury. Obviously, probably going to keep her out. I haven't seen the extent of the injury, but I think I have seen that she's already had surgery. So typically with those kind of injuries, I think it's probably going to be at least a year, if not more. Um, Unfortunately, I don't think that's her first time having injuries around her knees, and so yeah, it will hopefully speedy recovery for Zoe. But yeah, for me that was the main takeaway, and you hate to see that with anyone, whether you like them or not. So the other main point from this match for me was the return in Kyrie saying taking a pin on the first night back. Not ideal, but obviously with Zoe's injury, who if you read the dirt sheets and all that, apparently she was the one to take the pin, which obviously makes sense. She hasn't been doing too much lately, and certainly hasn't been winning a bunch of matches, so that would make sense. We just had to do the best with what we could, and I think Rhea and Kyrie obviously did their best. They still had some nice spots after Zoe was unfortunately departed. Um, yeah, they just weren't going to let Kyrie beat Rhea, I don't think. So just wasn't an option. And Rhea Ripley is extremely over, has been for quite some time. Anytime she's out in front of the WWE universe, they welcome her with open arms. And arguments of her being overpushed are always out there, but the crowd, at least the live crowd, clearly wanted her to win. It's just unfortunate that it came at the cost of Kyrie staying on her first night back. So, but yeah, so far we have Rhea, Roxy, and Liv Morgan in Money in the Bank. So, or excuse me, not Liv Morgan, Alexa Bliss in Money in the Bank. So, looking pretty good so far. We have half of our qualifiers on the women's side. We then get into our main event, and this features Braun Breaker and Jeyuso in a non-title match, which I think is probably the right call, because had it been a title match, I think we all knew what was going to happen, and even still, it kind of went that way anyways. Yeah, what an overbooked, I would say, main event. I think it's all necessary. It's just I think we all kind of saw the writing on the wall here. In my opinion, Jay gets too much offense in here. I think Braun Breaker is just not being treated like uh, the animal essentially that he is, especially of this faction. He's supposed to be that guy. But as outlined by Paul earlier in the match, this match was made not to take Braun's title, but just simply to wear Jay down and kind of take down his first line defenses, his defense. This wasn't really accomplished, I don't feel like, though, because before Seth ended the match, it felt like it was. You could argue me Jay got just as much, if not more, offense in. So, yeah, I guess the point being Jay can take on anyone. He took on Seth last week, so it just kind of is what it is, I guess. Whether you agree with it or not, Jay is clearly over. Just I'm not sure he needs to be as dominant or kind of holding his own as much in the ring. He's supposed to be the underdog kind of champion, kind of like a Sami Zayn, Daniel Bryan kind of thing. But I feel like he's getting a little more than that at this point. So, but anyway, speaking of Sammy and Punk end up getting involved after Seth interferes. Obviously, this match was cut short. I think that's the third time this night we see an interference finish. Yeah, it's just a glaring problem WWE has right now, and it gets old. But we just deal with it and talk about it the best we can. But yeah, Seth and Braun end up holding their own and brawling outside of the ring. So the four guys are outside the ring now. And then Logan comes back and knocks out Jay. What I thought was Jay holding his own and sitting tall before their match this Saturday ends up being Logan. So now Logan gets kind of revenge for earlier in the evening. KP, yeah, lots to talk about in these two matches. Felt like some goods and bads here, but just get your opinion on these two matches here and the overall takeaways.
Yeah, I think first things first, just want to address Zoe Stark, and yeah, it was an absolutely horrific injury. You know, fingers crossed that she will have a speedy recovery, or as speedy as we can possibly hope for anyway. Based on the severity, it looked absolutely horrific the way that she landed on her leg. So yeah, unfortunate. You know, very, very bad luck on her part. But yeah, fingers crossed she will make a recovery at some point very, very soon. And, you know, we'll see her back in the ring again. But yeah, it's always unfortunate having an injury. Obviously, you know, having a triple threat and then one person being removed then becomes a one-on-one. You know, you feel bad for everybody involved, but obviously more so for the injured party. Yeah, I think it's hard to really judge it because obviously they would have had plans for the triple threat. They would have had, you know, sequences and you know, little bits planned out for here and there with each person involved. So I think like as the match was starting to sort of like pick up into a little bit of pace, you know, obviously that happened, and then it just sort of like took a little bit of a downturn from there. But yeah, it is unfortunate to see Kairi taking a loss on her return. I was quite excited to see her back, and you know, Rhea Ripley qualifying for the Money in the Bank ladder match, I feel is a bit unnecessary. I don't really think she really needs this, considering she's literally just been, as of like last week, eyeing up the women's championship, and ultimately there was nobody else really ready for a match against Io. You know, as we stand. So I'm not entirely sure why she's been put in this position. She's going to qualify. Well, she's going to be in the Money in the Bank ladder match. So whether the plan is to have her win the contract to cash in on Io pretty much straight away, I can see that happening. I don't want it to, but I can see it taking place. But that's where my mind is at the moment. And yeah, I really would have liked to have seen someone like Kairi or possibly even a Zoe Stark, you know, qualify for that and like had their chance to shine on a PLE. But yeah, we're going to Rhea Ripley, and I guess we'll see what happens there on. The main event, yeah, I mean it's the continuation. You know, we make our next step in this whole saga. Seth, Braun, Heyman, you know, they continue to be the main event of Raw at the moment, and rightly so. You know, they're one of the biggest talking points, if not the biggest talking point right now on Monday nights. So it's completely fair. You got Sami and Punk coming on in, you know, building that match at Saturday night's main event, so obviously, you know, setting the scene for this coming Saturday. And yeah, I think just the way that Jeyuso's going about his business at the moment, you know, with these matches and stuff, you know, he's been made to look strong. And I know you touched over that. But I think the world champion has to have some sort of you know, good showing as much as they can do with Jeyuso anyway. Because you know, I mean, I'm trying to be as polite as possible here towards Jeyuso. I'm not his biggest fan. I'm honest with that. But I think, you know, now that we are in a timeline where he is the world heavyweight champion, you have to make him look, you know, decent enough and make him look like he does deserve this, you know, this position on the card. So yeah, to have him, I guess, really just show up and, you know, look maybe a little weak at times wouldn't be the best idea. So I guess they're doing the right thing here. Logan Paul at the end, good. Glad to have him coming on out and, you know, asserting some sort of you know, fight back and payback towards Jeyuso. That was definitely necessary. Obviously, we have already spoken about the whole relationship and, you know, seriousness between himself and the whole Gunter looming situation coming up very, very soon. So yeah, Logan having the last laugh, I think, is the perfect end to Raw here in this sense, you know, based on what the main event was. Laying out Jeyuso, just, you know, it makes those steps towards Saturday's main event so we don't just completely write it off. So yeah, the right way to do it for sure. And yeah, don't really have too much else to say about all that. In terms of this Raw, I think it was better than last week. It's not saying much because last week was a very, very big drop in quality. But yeah, this show had some nice segments in it. I'm liking the fact that Money in the Bank qualifiers are here. You know, we've got stuff to actually look forward to, and you know, to see who's going to be booking their spots in that match. Roxanneperez, very happy for her. Rhea Ripley, a little bit confused about that one. You know, we've got Saturday night's main event segues, you know, continuations there. And you know, that thing with Theory and Waller is interesting as always. But yeah, I gave this one a 7 out of 10. I think it was an improvement, like I said. But I think it's quite a way off being a good show still. I think they've still got a bit of work to do. Hopefully we can get past that main event. And then on the proper road to Money in the Bank, then we can sort of like pick things up a little bit more, and we can see if we're going to get some better quality shows. But yeah, what did you think, Nick, in terms of this Raw? Do you sort of like share the same sort of wavelength as I do, or are you maybe a little bit one way or the other on that?
Yeah, it was definitely a show mixed. It was a mixed bag for sure. You have your goods with Roxanne winning and debuting on Raw or getting that official contract, and then the not so goods being, yeah, Kyrie losing and Rhea winning. And you made a good point about it. You know, it just doesn't Rhea doesn't really fit that Money in the Bank kind of holder. Kyrie and or Zoe would have made, or Kyrie and or Zoe would have made a much better decision. Obviously, Zoe was not an option, but and you know maybe Kyrie was meant to pen Zoe. We'll just never know what was on the fly there. And then yeah, the main event, it kind of just makes it a bit awkward that you know the Saturday night main event is this week, and then 2 weeks from this weekend we have Money in the Bank. So it makes for an awkward build a little bit. We're kind of building the two shows, but this Raw very much felt like, especially with that main event, we had to get in what we could as fast as we could for that pay-per-view this Saturday. So yeah, this as you mentioned, this one was better than last Monday. I too gave this one a 7 out of 10. But yeah, these it was better. But yeah, as you mentioned, it it still has some work to do. And once we get past this Saturday, we'll hopefully have a very clear view and won't have to do these kind of double builds, so to speak. So, with that, this has been a Monday Night Raw recap for the push. And if you like what we have going on here, or you disagree with what we've said, or like what we're putting out, just let us know in the comments below. Otherwise, we will be back shortly for our NXT recap. But until next time, this has been The Push with Nick and KP. Take care.